Hello and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. In today's episode, we welcome on Lina Emilsson, the Chief Operating Officer of Nidec Energy. We talked about all things sustainability and EV. EV, electric vehicle, have been in the news right now for, in all honesty, all the wrong reasons due to various changes in government, toing and froing, and the effect on the manufacturer, and then the knock-on effect, unfortunately, for the working people with the job reduction has been clear for all there to see. So I thought it was very important today to tackle these problems and challenges head on, and we really got deep into it in terms of exactly what the challenges are, exactly what the biggest threat is, and who the biggest threat is, that of course being China, how we can compete with China if we can't compete on price. We talked to Lina in depth about her time at British Faults and the lessons from that, how the UK can learn from countries like Norway and their policy on EV. And in her words, we have 2 years to get this right before the EV UK industry is in a really bad place. So a real open and honest podcast, one that I learned a lot, and you're going to learn a lot as well. So please sit back and listen and enjoy this episode and take some actions off the back of it. Please, as I always do, ask, just like or subscribe, click that little button. It means the world to me and helps us grow the show. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the episode. Excellent. So a warm welcome today to Lina Emilsson, the Chief Operation Officer at Nidec Energy. Lina, how are you? You okay?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. So first question is the same question I ask everyone who comes on the show. What does it mean to you to be a leader, would you say?
Yeah. I think that's such an important and I think also underestimated point actually for any company. You know, how important it is to invest in your leadership across the whole organization. And for me, it's really about empowering people and bringing out the best in everybody in the organization, right? Everyone's there to contribute, and if you build a team who are so much better than you, you're gonna succeed, right? Either way. So it's all about bringing along the talent and exceptional people who will just excel in the roles. And your main responsibility as a leader is to enable them to do their best, right? Make sure the conditions are right, make sure they get the right training, make sure they get mentorship and support, make sure they are free to make decisions, that they are free to influence, that they are free to impact also their own working environment and their day-to-day activities. So for me, it's all about building empowered people who are passionate about what they do.
Yeah, I really like that. And what I like about that in particular is I think there's a lot of pressure on leaders to feel like they need to be the best and they need to be the
Yeah,
person with all the answers. And I love what you said there. You build a
exactly.
team of people who are
And
better
it's
than
really
you.
the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because you're looking for your team to have the answers. You just
uh-huh,
really want to guide them to find the
yeah.
right answers. Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing to go through that because whether it's ego or whether it's pride, but
Yeah.
when you first start, you don't realize that, do you? You feel
No.
you need to feed them all the
Yeah,
food
yeah,
every
and
day.
you're suffering so much as a new leader. You're suffering so much from expectations from everyone around you,
Yeah,
mostly your superiors, right? Real or not, you still believe the expectation is for you to know everything and do everything and be the best, right? But that's
yeah.
not what it's all about. It's about succeeding as a team, and if you bring your team to success, that is actually your success.
When do you think you first realized that? Did you always, or was that part of the journey that sort of penny dropped?
I think it's been part of the journey actually. So, my first management job was in production, in pharmaceutical production. And obviously, I came in as a young female engineer. This was an old gang of old men and women who've been operators for a long time on the shop floor, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, I didn't know everything, right?
Uh,
So they knew so much more than me. So I think I figured that out quite quickly. And I think it's about finding the individuals in your team who are the informal leaders, who are the experts, and the ones who really contribute and who wants to make an impact. And once you know who those people are, you set them up for success. And that that kind of cannot fail.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to dig really deep today into the EV and sustainability world. But I
Yeah.
like initially to go back briefly, just so people understand a bit about your journey. I'm
Mhm.
always fascinated why people got into engineering and manufacturing. Was
Yeah.
that something you fell in, or something you've always wanted to do then?
No, I think it was a little bit, well, actually, to be honest, a bit of both.
Mhm.
I was the kind of kid who was just glued to the TV when there was these kinds of shows inside the factory and things
Yeah.
like that, right? It's just so fascinating. But it was actually a random coincidence in terms of the company I worked for in the pharma industry that they were recruiting a lot just when I graduated. So it wasn't actually a conscious decision to go straight into manufacturing.
Yeah, yeah. And specifically pharmaceutical, that was the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
farm at the time that was really growing around the Stockholm area where I was then.
Great, excellent. And it obviously took you some time to get into the world of sustainability. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
still a relatively new term for some
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
When did you realize that was a passion, would you say? Because it obviously
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah, it is. It's very much so. And I think that was, I did a long journey in different leadership roles through the pharma industry and then just felt, it was when I was on maternity leave with my third child and I just, I want to have a bigger impact and environmental care, sustainability is so important to me. So how can I make a contribution here? How can I actually have a job and really, really drive my passion and make an impact in that space? So yeah, that was 2017.
Well, do you mind me asking where the passion came from? Because I guess I think there's still a missing gap. Maybe it's an education piece, awareness piece for a lot of people who just don't know enough about it. I don't think it's a case of people don't care. I just don't think they know enough
Yeah.
about it to care, if that makes sense.
Mm-mm.
Was that, did you just in your time within manufacturing and pharmaceutical, you saw what was happening, or was it external influences? What led you to sort of find that passion?
Yeah, I think it's both actually, because the company I worked for did have a strong, environmental plan and everything we did from saving on, electricity, from managing the lights in the factory, recycling every single piece of waste, and really, really segregating all the waste streams and being very super conscious
Yeah.
on environmental impact in the factory as such. So I think that was a really good starting point. And then obviously, of course, with the more media coverage around the global warming. I've also really been very passionate around just environmental toxins and, the waste streams that we do have that's just polluting everything around us.
Yeah.
So for me, it was many things weighing together.
A very basic level, would you say? Because I still think, again, it gets back to the education piece. I care about it, you care about it. Why should people why should people care about it enough to try and do something about it, would you say?
Yeah, I think just the obvious answer is if you've got kids, right? Do you want them to be able to actually live on this planet or not? That's basically the easy answer, right? And actually, what we're seeing now, just also short term, is these extreme weather conditions. We will have environmental or weather crisis and issues that will actually disrupt the day-to-day life for everybody with flooding, with storms, with these kinds of extreme weather events that, we don't, nobody wants to experience, I don't believe.
No, no.
Then feeling that connection in terms of, yes, I recycle all my waste, or I drive an EV, or I don't drive at all, I take the bike, in terms of actually thinking that your small actions has an impact. I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for people to think, everything adds up in the end. So it does matter what I do day to day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's habits, isn't it? Because we can all
Yes.
let's say people recycle at work or do things within the business, but if they haven't learned the habits to then go home and do that,
Yeah.
the impact is so small.
Yeah.
And if they don't influence their family or their children, then it's so small.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
still shocked by, we've been in five different offices in the last 9, 10 years, and every single one, we've had to seek out external companies to come and pick up recycling. So the
Mm.
building, the commercial
Yeah.
properties, big
Yeah.
commercial properties, they don't have recycling. I think
Oh,
that's
wow.
criminal, really. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's we've
Yeah.
got all these laws and legislation at home, but
Mm.
businesses with 50 people in,
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
don't need to. So it's stuff like that which I still think we're miles away. What I am pleased with. is I can see the shift now with the mentality of the new generation, and I actually
Mm,
can see it. They're
mm,
asking, on a recruitment
yeah.
point of view, they're asking what
Yeah.
companies are doing sustainability.
Yes.
They're
Yeah,
asking,
exactly.
and I think they actually care rather than saying the right things. I think
Mm,
that people are growing
mm,
up now, and I think
yeah.
that's probably where social media is a
Yeah.
real positive,
Mm,
I
yeah.
would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I totally agree. And the more people start caring, the more people start talking, the more people are actually asking those questions in interview and recruitment processes, right?
Yeah,
Companies will also understand that this is actually from an employee branding perspective very important. If we're going to attract talent, this is what they care about.
100%. Obviously, you made the move to the UK. Um,
Yes.
was that something again you wanted to do, or was it a role that you couldn't turn
Yeah.
down? What was the
Yeah.
decision there?
No, I did actually do like an expat experience in the UK back in 2013, 2014, and I did really fall in love with the country back then. It's so beautiful, and I do like the work culture as well, and the business setup. At that time, I couldn't stay, so had to move back to Sweden, but I've always had a dream to come back. And then obviously British Volt called me and wanted to bring me over, and I just, basically said yes on the day and just, when can I come?
Yeah, yeah, and here you are in the northeast, which isn't typically a place people sort of strive. But of a resident of 22 years, I moved here and I love it. I think you've got to live here to appreciate, haven't you? You really have.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's fantastic. It is a fantastic area.
Yeah,
Yes, weather-wise, it's a bit colder and the wind, I haven't really gotten used to the wind just yet, but
yeah, you
everything
will.
else is amazing.
I don't know what you can and can't say about British Falls, but it'll definitely be an interesting topic for a lot of people because when they came here in the northeast, it swept everyone. It was this.
Yeah.
This is going to be fantastic. It was just
Mm,
so
mm.
positive for the area, and there was the it just everything was great. And then
Yeah.
obviously it just fell. So
Mm,
that must
mm.
have been a real difficult period to go through that with the business, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, such a shame, really, because obviously the site is exceptional for battery manufacturing. There was complete hydropower electricity available. The port is there, the railhead is there, everything's there to really sustain a large gigafactory for battery manufacturing. So it was all set up beautifully. There were good products in development in the pipeline as well. Manufacturing and industrialization project was ticking along quite well as well. And I think the major failure point was the inability to really sign up offtake, which then, of course, if you got the offtake, you get the investors and you can move from there, right? So it was really, really challenging at that point. And the other thing about cell manufacturing specifically, it's such a difficult business, and most of these projects are grossly underestimated in terms of what it actually takes to get a gigafactory up and running. So timelines weren't realistic, and then you start disappointing some of your stakeholders because you're delaying and things like that. That's really detrimental to that kind of endeavor.
Yeah. What do you think are the key lessons that they should and could have learned, do you think, if they were to do that project this time round?
Yeah.
What would they do
I
differently?
think this so time to market is one that's really, really critical, right? There was really no focus on time to market, and the strategy of thinking that let's develop the best product, we can charge a premium, and having that kind of belief, and kind of disregarding the whole situation with the battery industry in China. So it was too much internal focus and too little awareness, I would say, around how the global development was actually going. Because I mean, you can buy any battery cell for, a teeny tiny amount from
Yeah.
China. And how do you convince your customers that, well, actually pay a premium or choose British produced ones? They're not going to pay double the price.
Mhm.
Might pay a little bit extra, yes,
Yeah.
but we're not talking double, right? So you really need to be competitive still
Yeah.
and realize the industry that you're in the market you're in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that, and that's one of my biggest concerns about manufacturing in general.
Yeah,
It's not just China now. There's,
yeah,
we're hearing,
sure.
Dubai and other nations now are really
Absolutely.
competing on
Yeah,
on price, and
yeah,
when companies are getting squeezed more than they ever have been, it's going to come
exactly.
down to price,
Mm, mm,
unfortunately, and that's price quality where's the
mm.
gap.
Yeah.
I mean, how big do you think the impact is let's use China as an example on the EV market now, would you say, as we stand here
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. No, so for the battery and EVs, I think the China impact is quite high.
Mm.
Because obviously all of the major OEMs now have contracts with battery suppliers from China, partly because there are very few options in Europe, and all the
Yeah.
European companies are really struggling to meet timelines and develop on time. But then also reliability, quality, price. China is outstanding.
Yeah.
That's where we are currently. And I only think we've got a couple of years, 5 years to turn this.
Yeah.
And then I think that race might be lost.
Yeah. 100%. So let's say we've got 2 years, and let's say we can't compete on price because we
No,
can't.
exactly. We can't.
What can we do? Would you say?
Yeah. So obviously, sustainability is one of the key ones where Europe still is really well positioned to take a stance and differentiate the product. But the other one is still on innovation and technology. There is so much that is smarter, better, novel that we can develop and still are superior. And that actually goes for both product, but also for production.
Mhm.
So actually having smarter processes, smarter equipment, um, fewer manufacturing steps, not reliant on manual workforce, but actually automating all of those things, we still have an advantage. And I think that's the cutting edge where we should really, really focus.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I've said a few times recently that UK powerhouse manufacturing it isn't now, but it can be, and it should be
Yeah,
based
yeah,
on it's got
yeah,
everything it should have there.
totally.
Appreciate there's a skill shortage, but there's a skill shortage everywhere. But they
Yes,
100% that I agree with that automation piece and that investment.
yeah, yeah.
So if that's the solution, what is the challenge to get there? I still think it's probably down to companies affording to be able
Exactly.
to
And
do
the
so.
upfront investment, if you
Yeah.
do want to automate and you do want to invest in smart manufacturing or leveraging IoT and manufacturing 4.0 and all of those things, right? It does require kind of a bigger capex upfront. And I think that is really the main challenge. And I think, just having incubator programs, funding available, both grants but also loans,
Mhm.
to really help those companies set off and drive these kind of initiatives.
Yeah.
It's an absolute necessity.
Yeah, because exactly that. What we're talking about is cash, isn't it? It's capital.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can't access it, no, then you can't build really innovative manufacturing assets either.
Without us getting, I guess, too political, what fine if we do, but if it's do you think it's a lack of understanding from let's say the government that how big manufacturing could be and how good that could be for the economy versus the negative, and
Yeah.
they're not putting enough cash or the understanding of where is the gap? Because if they understood
Yeah,
that,
and
the economy
I
would.
think because the sexy thing is R&D, right?
Yeah,
Research
yeah.
development, product innovation, or
Mhm.
or universities and PhD programs, and kind of manufacturing is a little bit on the back burner. It's not as sexy, it's
Yeah,
industry, So I do not think they put enough incentives into that because they're so focused on supporting pure R&D work and
yeah.
not seeing that industrialization and getting factories off the ground is also important. Your products aren't going anywhere if you can't make them. So
100%. And what I
yeah,
have seen, I've seen a lot of companies start to take action, even without deep pockets, where they've started to do what they can to automate and do what they can to be
yeah,
more efficient, and I guess
yeah,
use much more cost effective,
yeah.
methodologies for advanced manufacturing. And
Hmm.
I think if they wait for support, they would probably not going to get it realistically.
No. No,
So
and I think it's a matter of go and get what you need and go and ask for it. Go and, fight
yeah,
for it as well.
yeah.
And then do what you can on your own. Yeah, yeah.
And this is where companies need to collaborate with each other to understand what good looks
Definitely.
like. Because if
Definitely,
you
because there's also a whole value chain here, right? If there's
massive,
a manufacturing company, they need equipment, and there's an equipment manufacturer somewhere. So there is an ecosystem here that can
yeah,
totally collaborate.
100% that. What
Mm.
do you think we can learn from other countries? Just about process and about supply chain and EV and that sort of stuff. Your Norway's, perhaps your Norway's the world, for example, who seem very
Yeah.
efficient. Are they a good example of a company that we could learn from?
Yeah, I think if you're just looking at the whole EV shift in Norway, I mean, currently they sell more EV cars than anyone else in the world. Well, maybe China is soon on par, right?
Yeah.
But they made that switch
Okay.
by governmental incentives and all sorts of programs to actually make sure people prioritize buying EVs.
Right.
I think UK is not doing too bad here though, because there are many schemes. There are this, salary sacrifice schemes for EV programs, and the charging infrastructure is decent
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. It's got a lot better. So
Yes.
I'm 4 years into my EV,
Yeah.
and when I first got it, I've got one of the first sort of not first models, but the technology isn't great. It's a 4x4, but
All right.
I get about 120 miles out best and about
Yeah,
70
yeah,
worst.
yeah.
And it's fantastic that around the houses, charge it at night time, cheap as
Yes,
chips, love
exactly.
it. Do
Mm,
get range anxiety if I go anywhere, but the difference now is when I first had it, there was hardly any chargers.
yeah.
They were so reliable. Now
Mm,
they're everywhere,
yes.
realistically, and they're quick.
Mm,
They're not
mm,
cheap yet, and I think that's the difference. Those fast
yeah.
ones aren't cheap, but
Yeah.
the infrastructure has definitely improved, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned there the cost is coming down, so I
Mm,
can see that turn. But actually, there's some sudden hesitation as we sit here today, post budget, because and post government decision to sort of
mm,
push back the
mm,
regulations, despite the fact there's been some breaking news today I haven't read yet. So something may have happened. I've
mm.
seen the world,
Yeah. Cross
maybe
our
at you've
fingers and
seen.
hope it's good.
Yeah, yeah. Because and do you think that because right now with so many issues in the last few weeks with automotive,
Yeah.
right? I've seen so
Yes.
many redundancies. I've
Yeah.
spoken to
Yeah.
so many people who have gone, well, because it's been pushed, we're in limbo in terms
Yeah.
of what to produce now. Do you think
Mm.
that's the trouble? We're in this sort of limbo situation now.
Yeah, and I think especially for automotive who have such long timelines in terms of the new models that are coming, they're 5 years ahead when they're
Yeah,
planning, right? They can't have political decisions changing day by day because they just can't switch that quickly. So I think that's detrimental actually to the strategy. But then obviously I'm also very biased because political decisions need to drive the transition.
yeah,
It's not going to happen by itself, and politics need to really drive these incentives. But also just banning ICE and not putting appropriate incentives in place to further EVs, that's also not helping. Because obviously you do have every person, right, who can't afford buying an EV and
yeah,
whatnot, right? So you need to enable them to make the transition,
yeah.
and really make sure that this is commonplace and not just for some people who can actually afford it.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast with a very quick 30-second description of my business. Theo James are an engineering and manufacturing recruitment search firm based in Durham. We specialise in contract and permanent opportunities from blue-collar, semi-skilled roles right the way up to C-suite level exec positions. If you're looking for any new additional staff or new opportunity for yourself in the industry, please contact me or the team. There'll be a specialist in your area waiting to help. I'm incredibly proud of this business and what we've built since our inception in 2015, and I would love to extend that service out to you. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the episode. Do you have any foresight in terms of if there will be really affordable cars? Because you mentioned that, because for a lot of people a car is something they're happy to pay a lot of money for, whether
Yeah,
that's upfront or a
yeah,
few £100s a
yeah,
month. People don't see that as debt, they see it as because they like the car. Other
mm,
people like to spend £700 on a car which
mm,
will get them to A to B,
mm,
and that's all they
that's
care
it.
about, and they don't
Yeah.
want to spend 20 grand on a car. Do you
Mm.
think how much is that something that's been looked at in the EV world, would you say?
No, I'm not sure. And it's quite interesting actually, because France a while ago created a program for affordable EVs and put a max price tag that people can actually access it.
Mm,
And the other thing is actually second-hand EVs, because now the batteries are proving to be better than you thought from the beginning, right? In the beginning, people said, well, those cars are only going to last 5 years and then the batteries run out and there's no value left in the car. So I think that hesitation for buying an EV as well is still there to some extent.
yeah.
But actually, now the battery packs are sometimes proven to live longer than the actual car.
Okay.
So the more we see that, the more the second-hand market will take off, and that's perhaps where people are more willing to pay less and still get a decent EV.
that does make sense. Because even my car, if I look at it, I'm worried how much it's depreciated because
Yeah.
now you can get that same car, but the
Yeah.
battery will do double what mine would. So why would
Yeah.
someone,
Yeah,
buy?
exactly.
And we got that car when there was a fantastic government scheme where you could counter it off your corporation
Oh
tax.
yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Do you know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. No, and that's the other thing, right? Making
yeah,
sure that the government protect those kinds of incentives that will drive people to actually switch to EVs. Could
yeah,
be all sorts of those things, right? Offset tax or your salary sacrifice leasing programs or whatnot.
yeah. Is there schemes and ways that other businesses or other countries have done so? You mentioned Norway to try and push that through. Then are we
Yeah, and I
behind the
think in
times there?
Norway they've had a lot of grants and tax relief on EVs to really make sure people had a big benefits when they bought them. And
Right.
obviously the charging infrastructure has been there as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that has to be a big part of it. There's still a missing gap for people understanding the
Yeah.
benefits
Yeah, exactly.
of
Exactly.
that
And a lot
is.
is behavior and expectations, right? Yes, I get range anxiety. There are no charges. It's
Yeah.
not going to run in winter because the cold's just going to take my range off.
Yeah.
Secondhand value is zero.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of
Myths.
various misconceptions that people might still have around EVs that will put them off.
Yeah. Another one you might be able to debunk. I hear people going, EV's not the future, hydrogen is the future, this type of stuff. What would you
Yeah.
say to those people?
So for cars, I don't think hydrogen has a future because it's too expensive,
Okay. Yeah.
and it won't be cost effective. Now, with the price of the batteries coming down, it's just not there for hydrogen. I think hydrogen's got another role to play in long distance, really heavy transport, for instance, where you can't charge. It could be ferry traffic or sea
Mhm.
freight or other types, but it's just not cost effective or cheap enough.
That's
Uh,
interesting. Yeah, because I think that will help to because people still again are concerned to buy electric because they think if they're going to buy hydrogen. So I think that
yeah.
again will help people.
Yeah.
We've touched on it briefly, but the energy storage piece. How sort of stable is the UK grid? Would you say? How does that work? Would you say?
Yeah, no, I think there is still, UK's plugged in. I think it's actually the highest percentage of wind power in all of Europe,
Right.
for natural reasons.
Yeah.
But with every single sustainable resource you plug into your grid, you're destabilizing the grid and really risking outages on the grid. So you do need battery energy storage to regulate the frequency, but also to act as a buffer for peaks and troughs. Because obviously the wind produces when the wind is high, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily where everybody comes home from work and puts their cooker on. So you do need to balance that demand and supply in a very different way because production will happen when it happens and
Yeah.
not when you have the demand peaks. And it's also around the grid capacity, because currently, if we were to just directly pump all the wind power or other sustainable sources like solar onto the grid can't actually take it all.
Right.
We would have to invest in so many new uh, transformer stations and everything. So the battery packs are actually also needed to just really even out the load on the grid as well. And then frequency regulation and voltage regulation as well to just keep it stable. So
Interesting.
it's an absolute necessity when you're pumping in more renewable power.
Yeah. Interesting. So predictions time now then. If we're at 2024 now, if we go 10 years ahead, let's say
Yeah.
it's 10 years time, based on everything you know about the technology, the challenges, the risks,
Mm.
what do you think the UK is going to look like in 2034, let's say,
Yeah.
realistically?
So my main hope is that the gas will be gone.
Okay.
All the houses are still heated with gas. There's such a wide gas network still that
Mhm.
I do hope will be gone.
And that'll be
On
with
the
heat
positive,
pumps, presumably, is it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. To just really
Mhm.
either being able to electrify everything and actually use sustainable sources, because the UK is really well positioned for wind. I mean, actually, even solar, you wouldn't think, but
Okay.
there's high efficiency solar now. So I think that would be the main desire. Whether it will happen or not, I'm not sure. But I already see in my council now, all the new houses they build have zero gas. They
Okay.
are all electric, right?
Yeah.
So this is happening. But your electricity use, of course, in your domestic environment is only as good as the quality of the power that your house
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Of
supplied
course.
with.
Yeah.
So that shift is so important that what happens with the overall power supply here. So there needs to be a different business model around your power. And I do hope that will be in place, over the next 10 years.
Yeah. And they do, to be fair, they do seem to be pledging to try to tackle that. I
Yeah.
think they've come under a lot of criticism, and rightly so, in my opinion, for the budget and recently. But they have pledged still the same amount of money to the renewables piece,
Yeah.
and I know they're looking to train heat pump engineers and that whole bit. So that
Mm.
seems to be
Mm.
moving forward.
Yeah.
Again, 9 out of 10 people do not understand it, and I think I'm not having a something in my
Mm.
garden. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? I don't think they really understand how that all works and how that's gonna. But that needs to be way moving forward, doesn't it? To people
Yeah.
heat their houses differently, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. And again, it's also down to people in some ways changing habits, etc. Having incentives to put your solar panels on your roof, having your own domestic battery energy storage so that you can actually leverage what you produce yourself, etc. So really making sure that those things are possible from a political and legislation standpoint is important.
Yeah. And what about the EV manufacturing in its isolation in the UK? What's your gut? Where do you think it will be in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I do still hope that it has a very strong position here in the UK. I mean, all of the old traditional OEMs here in the UK, they do have a line of electric cars, right?
You do?
There is production, and I think that
Oh,
the challenge they have, same as all the other OEMs, is to have a reliable battery source,
yeah.
which should hopefully be domestically produced as well. And you got the rules of origin and all of it, right? So that does need to come into play. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very challenging situation for those OEMs, right? But it's all about making that happen. And then the other side of it is, of course, all the manufacturers' responsibility when it comes to having sustainability strategies and, proper, credible plans in place to reduce their carbon footprint, to reduce their environmental impact, all of those things that are really critical. Because if all the manufacturing sites and all the plants in the UK had a very strong sustainability effort, that will be a massive impact, a
Yeah.
massive impact.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think, and I'm still very confident. Automotive has been heavily hit over the last few weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
What all the conversations I have at the quite top level are, it is painful, very painful, but it is temporary.
yeah,
that there's, people will start buying cars
mm,
again, and
yes,
ultimately, when those orders come in, jobs will come back. It's just a
mm,
really
mm,
horrible situation right now to
yeah,
see so many companies doing what they're doing. But you
yeah,
mentioned that all the brands have got or will have their own version of
yes,
EV. I mean,
exactly.
JLR can't make enough, hybrid models, and
Mm,
they're bringing
mm,
out their Land Rover, Range Rover, a full, I think, 450 miles it's going to get, and
yeah, yeah,
I think
exactly.
that when the technology is getting that level, I think for
Yeah,
me that's when the game changes. When people
yeah,
go, doesn't really matter what charging system's like, because I'll just charge at home every month.
exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Mm,
that I'm confident it will.
yeah, yeah.
I really do.
No, and I mean, the EV industry is so kind of sensitive to the market fluctuations and
Yeah.
the economy, the
Yeah.
financial
Yeah.
state of the nation, if you like,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Versus other industries that are kind of less
Yeah.
less impacted. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's new, it's still, hasn't got years and years in it to understand what good
exactly.
looks like, and it's still finding its
Yeah,
feet. So I
yeah,
think that's all part of
yeah,
it, isn't it? 100% sure.
definitely.
Um,
Mm.
Tell me a bit about Nidec Energy. So what part do they play in all this?
Yeah, so our mother company, Nidec, they've been in the battery energy storage for quite some time. So they deliver and supply the big, DC blocks, the containerized solutions for these big utility parks or industry scale energy storage systems. And what Nidec wants to do is just move a little bit up the supply chain and start
Okay.
making their own modules and packs. So that's where we come in to set up local manufacturing and assembly in Europe to make sure that there is a more secure supply and localized supply to kind of feed these containers, basically.
Yeah, yeah, excellent stuff. So, and what are you coming up against at the moment? Are they sort of is there plenty of opportunity out there? Is there some sort of
Yeah,
barrier?
the market's really, really big, and it's really expanding and growing a lot across Europe. The
Mm,
challenge again is with the Chinese competition, because they are super cheap, they're very reliable, high volumes. They've been at it for, 10 odd years, and
yeah.
we are just catching up in Europe now.
Okay.
I think that's the main challenge. And if you do look at the EV industry, they are a bit more inclined to actually pay more for a good sustainability credentials and ESG, right? Versus
Yeah.
energy storage market's not as mature yet, and
Mhm.
the price is the key
Yeah. Yeah.
determination factor at the moment. So I do hope the industry as such or the market will kind of mature more on the sustainability side and actually be ready to pay a bit more.
Yeah.
That said, the Chinese companies also know what European companies ask for.
Hmm.
So they are not far behind in actually adapting to sustainable manufacturing either.
Yeah.
So we should definitely not underestimate their ability to adapt here.
Yeah. It's a challenge and an opportunity, isn't it? It's somewhere
Yeah,
we're somewhere right in the middle of all that now
yeah,
because it's exciting to see that the UK could and should be such an important player in this. But
exactly.
I think if they sleepwalk into it,
Mm,
it's
mm,
going to be a real challenging one.
mm.
Are you still seem passionate and positive and up for it? Is that just your mindset, or it's that
Yeah,
where?
yeah, totally. I mean, this is so important, and we still got a good chance to really industrialize and put the UK battery manufacturing on the map here. This can still be done, and we are very well positioned to do this, responsibly with good sustainability credentials and making sure that we can also feed the UK demand, which is actually quite large. If you're just looking at the energy storage, UK is one of the biggest markets in all of Europe,
Okay.
actually. I think it's
Yeah,
something like even number 4 or number 7 globally as well.
really.
So the market in UK is huge when it comes to energy storage alone.
Yeah, excellent. And no, it's fascinating. It's good to hear. It's good to hear some real positivity. So, final question, just on that: if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the sector which enabled growth and opportunities, what would it
Yeah.
be?
Oh, one thing. Well, I think it's definitely access to funding. And I think the other one, as you actually briefly mentioned, is the skills. Access to the right skills and experience to do this.
Hmm.
And to be honest, Europe, it's a very scarce talent pool here with the right industrial experience. We're great in the research, great on the university scale, but actually manufacturing, industrialization, we just don't have enough people with the right experience and skill sets here.
And do you think that is a training issue, or do you think that is attracting people to want to train in the first place? Would you say?
I think it's both actually.
Okay.
Um, I don't know, the university programs out there, etc., but having industrialization programs, that's probably not as attractive as going into research. Which is actually why I like the Northeast, because Northeast has taken more the industrialization approach and are actually really focusing on that angle rather than material, super scientific work. This is more centered on industry,
Yeah.
and that is so needed. It's really, really the key thing.
Yeah, and there's some great stuff happening in Northeast. Do you know what I mean? You've still
Yeah,
got ASC, Vision. You've still got
exactly.
loads of great companies doing some
Absolutely.
amazing things. There's still growth there, and
Yeah.
this is why I feel like it's important to talk about this type of stuff on the podcast because the news, like, unfortunately, bad news sells, and they like to tell the bad stuff that happens, and unfortunately,
Hmm.
is out there. But there's so
Hmm.
much good positivity and
Yeah.
opportunity and
Yeah.
challenges. It's still a great place.
Yeah.
Particularly, like you say, the Northeast. There's
Hmm.
so much going for it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right in Northumberland now. There's loads happening around Blythe and all that sort of piece.
Yes.
There's you know
Exactly.
around Durham, you've got a new sort
Mm.
of science R&D. There's so much.
Yeah.
There really is. So
Yeah.
no, and this is why it's important. Well, thank you very much today. I think you've you'll have you've debunked some myths which people still, don't, which is great.
Mm,
People don't understand
mm,
a lot of that EV side, but actually, you've talked about the challenges, and I think that's important to do so, because if we
yeah.
aren't aware of those, and if we aren't aware of the biggest competition, let's
Hmm.
say China, and we're not doing
Mm,
anything about it, it will
mm,
be too late. Because I agree, I think we've got 2 or 3 years,
yes. Yeah.
crucial 2 or 3 years
Yeah. Yeah.
to do so, and the government needs to support them because companies can't do it alone. So, thank you so much, Lina. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Manufacturing Leaders podcast. It absolutely means the world to me. Please let me know if you need any assistance. As a business, we look at providing partnerships with manufacturing and engineering companies to really help their recruitment and retention. On the recruitment piece, anywhere from blue collar, semi-skilled staff right the way up to C-suite level executive appointments, but also much more than that. We run events, so please let me know if you're interested in any of those. If you are interested indeed becoming a podcast guest, I'd be very, very keen to speak to you as well. More than happy to do so. But as a business, as I say, we look at key partnerships to really help your recruitment, your retention, your marketing, your training. We really believe in the partnership piece and being an extension of your business. So we're very proud to work in this sector. I love manufacturing engineering, and my staff are just as passionate about it as I am. So thank you once again for listening. Please get in touch to talk about anything we can do to help. Look forward to speaking to you very soon. Thank you.